テレビにしかネットからかみんなの欲の友
Hello and welcome to WGTC Radio, the official podcast of entertainment website We Got This Covered. I am Jonathan Lack.
And I am Sean Chapman.
And we are here to finish talking about video games, or at least our favorite video games for now.
Man, it feels, we've been talking about this for like 3 weeks. It's crazy.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago we started our countdown of our top 10 favorite video games of all time to complement our lists of our favorite movies and our favorite TV shows. Same format, we each have 10, we go back and forth. Part 1 aired 2 weeks ago, we did numbers 10 through 8. Last week we did 7 through 4, and today we are finishing it off, the highly anticipated conclusion.
Yes, to the saga, the trilogy that is our top 10 video games of all time.
Hopefully it's not like a lot of trilogies where we just peter off in that last third.
Yeah, that's almost all trilogies, you know.
I know.
It's just like, the ending is just, you sink it.
So prepare to be disappointed.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean... You know, when Superman 64 is my number one video game of all time, you know.
Yes, all right. So, Sean, let's give him a recap.
Okay.
All right.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah. My number 10 game of all time was Minecraft.
My number 10 game of all time was Journey.
Number 9, Red Dead Redemption.
Number 9, StarCraft.
Number 8, Portal 2.
Number 8, Half-Life.
Number 7, Batman Arkham City.
And number 7, Red Dead Redemption.
Number 6, BioShock Infinite.
Number 6, Halo 3.
Number 5, The Last of Us.
Number 5, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
Number 4, Super Mario 64.
And number 4, Persona 4.
And my number 3 game of all time is... Halo Reach is my number 3 favorite game of all time.
You fucked that up already.
I fucked that up already. But anyway, in any case, Sean talked a lot last time. His number 6 favorite game, I believe, was Halo 3.
Yes.
And you talked a lot about what the Halo series means to you and whatnot, and how you went about picking your favorite Halo game. Halo series obviously means a ton to me, too. I mean, I think, really, Halo Combat Evolved, while I played that long after it came out, I played it when I got my Xbox in 2006, my Xbox 360, with Halo 2, that really is the moment I consider myself becoming like an actual gamer, like someone who really plays games regularly and heavily, and that I really owe that to Halo, and I specifically owe it to being drawn in so much by Halo Combat Evolved, obviously, and a lot of us do. Halo Combat Evolved is a masterpiece, and I don't think there's really any questioning holistically, and certainly in the sense of significance, that Combat Evolved is the best campaign in Halo.
Yeah.
And I won't argue that. And I think, but as you said, picking which Halo game represents my love of the series most, you kind of have to go through them, but for me there was no question at any point ever that Halo Reach was my favorite Halo game. It just absolutely is. It is the one I've sunk the most time into. It is the one that I have had the most fun with, and also, I don't want to say been the most moved by, because Halo 3 definitely had that emotional heft of coming into it, in 2007 with the hype, having played the first two, and that being just such an incredible conclusion to the Master Chief story. But Halo Reach is an overall experience. Looking at each part of it, I don't know. I don't think it has the best campaign because there's Halo Combat Evolved, and certainly not in terms of story, because the Combat Evolved story is kind of perfect. The Halo 3 story is great, and I really love the Reach story too. I love it a lot, and I love it in just its the direness of it and its unflinchingness in presenting this apocalyptic scenario. And I really like the characters and how it progresses in that way. But I think just in terms of total balance, it's my favorite campaign. In gameplay balance, how you move through it, I love every single level and moment of the campaign to death. I think the gameplay is just the perfect refinement of Halo, the best controls, the best way the game moves, the best set of guns and everything. And they stripped it down a lot. They got rid of stuff like dual wielding. Mm-hmm. They pared down the weapon set. But it just works flawlessly for me. And they introduced some new guns like the DMR that I think work fantastically in the context of this game, particularly. I That campaign I have played to completion at least 4 times that I can remember. And there might be more. I've played it twice on Heroic, once in co-op, once solo, and twice Legendary, once in solo, one in co-op. So I've played at least 4 times, and I love it all the time. And I've played each level. I've probably played it through to completion, just not in order, several more times than that, because I've played those levels for challenges and stuff so many times, and they never get old to me. I really think it doesn't do. Halo 3 does this very special thing where every level is like a different event.
Yeah.
Like they're very, very distinct. Halo Reach does not necessarily do that because the locations and environments, you're all on Reach. The environments look fairly similar. There's multiple city levels, for instance, but each level still, for me, has this very clear weight and meaning within the story, very clear different delineations between how you play one level versus the next in terms of what happens in those levels. And not just that, I feel like every encounter is really engaging, really compelling, all the way through. I just think that campaign as a piece of gameplay to me is just nigh flawless, and my favorite video game challenge ever. It is such a hard game on Legendary, but it's a fair challenge, and I'm frustrated when I play it on Legendary, and it took me a long time to complete, and I would have to go do something else for another couple days and come back to it. But man, when you get through it, it is so rewarding. The challenge always feels fair because to me it's the best realization of that Halo idea where you have an encounter. You have the tools you need to complete it, but you can approach it however you want, and there is no right way to do most Halo encounters.
Yeah.
It's whatever works best for you, and I think Halo Reach personifies that over and over again to me just beautifully. I remember the last thing you do in Reach is you get up on the big gun and you shoot down the ships.
Yeah.
But before that, you have to get up to that gun, and you have to get through this warehouse. And
that is like 4 or 5 elite zealots in there.
Yeah, and that to me is the hardest part in the whole game because it's not just the difficulty of the challenge. It's that at that point you are not just worn down, you have nothing left. You have no ammo, you've got very little, and that was so frustrating. It took me hours to beat, but man did I have fun, and man was it rewarding. And then you get some just emotionally crushing cutscenes to end the game, and one of the best post-credits things ever in a video game. And then on the multiplayer side, I really think, again, you got to look at it as an overall package, because it's not just that it's got multiplayer now, and I feel the best version of the Halo multiplayer. It's got my favorite multiplayer maps behind Halo 2, and then you've got the Forge creation tool that has been improved from Halo 3. You've got the Theater tool, also improved from Halo 3.
It's like the same from Halo 3. Actually,
yes, that's true.
I think it's actually a little bit worse because you can't do online party viewing in the theater.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I never tried that. Okay, in any case, still a great theater mode. You've got the firefight mode, which I will always have a soft spot in my heart for ODST because that is so fucking tough in ODST, and I have so many fun memories of playing ODST. You can make it just like that if you want in Reach, but it's got firefight is such a versatile gameplay element here, and there's so many great maps for it, and it's just a really fun thing to do. You can go online, you can do it with friends locally, whatever you want. So it's got so many things to do. It is endlessly customizable. It takes the idea from Halo 3 of total user customability to an even further level with the amount of stuff you can do in the custom games and in the custom firefights and the Forge mode, and it made such great use over the last couple of years of updating the maps online with new Forge maps. People were always making cool stuff. Some of the maps I know best are Forge maps that they put in there at one point or another, like on SWAT. I mean, SWAT ultimately was, you would play on maybe Sword Base and a couple others, and then mostly it was Forge maps.
Yeah.
At a certain point in its life. So I really love it. I just feel like as an overall package, Halo Reach is just perfect to me. I have literally no complaints with it. I can't single out a single area that is not just so totally refined. It felt like Bungie just really took everything they learned from the last 3 games and ODST and just made the best sort of closing statement they could on this series. It is just the perfect swan song for it. And kind of my problem with Halo 4 is fantastic. And I don't want to take anything away from Halo 4, but you're kind of at that point, if you go further than Halo Reach, to me, you're messing with perfection. And I thought a lot of things in Halo 4, while good and really great, are not up to the level of Halo Reach for me. I thought Halo Reach, for instance, was a better balance between the progression system, but still sort of the traditional style of Halo gameplay, where it had some of the modern elements of you have a leveling system, you have EXP, and it's really fun and engaging, and you get to do stuff with it. I love the customability of your own Spartan, and that even carries into campaign. But at the same time, the general style of Halo gameplay is not hugely changed by that leveling system and the progression and whatnot. And I like it in Halo 4. I like it just fine. I think they did a fantastic job with it. I like it even better than the way they do it in, the Call of Duty games that it clearly hails from. But for me, Halo Reach is the ultimate Halo experience. I've played it more than any other Halo game. I'm not entirely sure why that is, because Halo 3 has been out longer. But I guess Reach hooked me And I don't want to say in a way that Halo 3 didn't, because Halo 3 hooked me and I played it a ton. As you said, we came out our first year of high school.
Yeah.
So we played it all through high school. But Reach, I guess, I got better at Halo over the years, I should say. And I guess Reach was just came at a moment in my life where I was open to playing a lot more Halo. And I loved it. I played it in college a ton that first year in the dorms. And I just love Halo Reach. And I could go into all the different facets of it. And particularly, I think the campaign is worth talking about. And it's wonderful. But and certainly doing a campaign this good without having that pre-existing emotional attachment to the characters that benefited Halo 2 and 3. Mm-hmm. But I love Halo Reach. So it is my favorite of the Halo series games, and probably always will be, and my third favorite game of all time. I debated where I would put this because it is, in a sense, standing in for the entire Halo series.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to rank it as its own game, and putting it at number 3 feels right to me, as both as a testament to what I love about Halo and to just the sheer perfection of this game as an overall package in my mind. So,
all right then.
Those are my thoughts on Halo Reach.
Do you want to have the Halo 3 versus Halo Reach argument?
I mean,
do we
I
want
really
to do that?
I feel like it just comes down to preference. I should also say before I finish on Reach, I really love the graphics of Reach. I think Bungie's art design is just impeccable always, and I think as technology got better and better, they were able to realize it more and more over the years. And then Marty O'Donnell's score, he really didn't go back to any of the themes he used before, but he wrote a score that is, I think Halo 3 is his best score overall.
I like his ODST score the best.
Oh, that's a great score. I forgot he did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the ODST score is so different.
Yeah, it's got the whole sort of horn brass vibe to it.
ODST is probably the best, but Halo Reach is still. I mean, the clip we played you there, that's just a crushing piece of music, and he does that throughout. I mean, if anybody drives the tone of Halo Reach, it's Marty O'Donnell and the music he composed for it.
Yeah.
So, really, just a fantastic game. Love it. So you don't like Halo Reach, apparently.
It's not that I don't like it. I just don't think it's as good as Halo 3. I think it's one of the. I guess it's hard to I mean, for me, it's like Halo 1, ignoring ODST because it's ODST such a weird game. Halo 1 and Halo 3 clearly stand above to me. And it's Halo 2, Halo Reach, and Halo 4 are all. I probably like Halo Reach a little bit more than 2 in terms of the campaign stuff, but I like 2's multiplayer a lot more. For me, Halo Reach, I think. It's just not it's not as much of an engaging game in terms of the multiplayer. I think that the campaign's really good. I really like the campaign of Reach, but the changes they make to the multiplayer in the sense of I don't despise it, but I don't love the armor
what are
abilities.
they? Armor abilities?
The sprint and particularly sprint, armor lock, and jetpack in a big way really break the flow of maps and the combat to me in a way that's I don't love. I also don't. I don't love really any of the maps from Reach. Thinking about them, I can't think of any one that stands out to me as being a really memorable, fun map that I had a lot of fun on. And I don't DMR versus I really like the DMR as a weapon, but I think the battle rifle's maybe a little bit better balanced. I think the multiplayer in Halo 3 is just much better designed. Because it's so refined because they didn't try to change a whole lot. The big addition is the equipment stuff, and there's obviously a lot more weapons in there.
And I guess I kind of always felt that about the equipment in Halo 3, where I never understood what the point. The equipment always felt so extraneous. I wouldn't
say it's it just feels like one additional little tool. I mean, usually it's a bubble shield or a power
it's what you feel about the equipment in Halo Reach. For me, it's in Halo 3, I always felt that was a distraction. And then in Reach, I think they integrated it much better.
I wouldn't say the armor abilities in Halo Reach are a distraction. I think they're game-breaking in some instances in terms of the map flow of the multiplayer. Of just jetpack is so ridiculous in how far you can travel with it that it's it breaks that really pure sort of arena-style combat of it's If a dude gets jetpack on a map like Sword Base, it's you can go anywhere at basically any time in the entire map, and that's sort of it breaks a lot of the balance in the flow to me of how that multiplayer combat works.
And I guess I disagree with that, but I still think, I don't know, I think it probably just comes down to personal preference at a certain point. I like the Reach system more, but I don't know if I want to say that.
Also, one other thing about Reach that is just I don't love is that I feel the base movement speed and jump height is reduced, and I don't love that either. It's because it makes the game feel slower to me too.
Well, what I was going to say is I don't necessarily know if I would say I like the multiplayer more or less, because it is very different than Halo 3 and 2 and 1, but I feel like Halo 3 is kind of the best version of that, and I really like Reach 2, and I played more Reach, and I enjoyed that more, and I don't say that to take anything away from 3. I just really love the Reach multiplayer and the way it flows, and I think it's great. I booted it up this morning to play a couple of matches and go into campaign a little bit just for this podcast, because I had not played it since Halo 4 came out, really. Refresh myself, and I just immediately felt this wave of familiarity with it and love for it, and going into the matches, and I just had a ton of fun just picking it up and playing it. It controls so well to me. I really, this to me is the perfect Halo game, the way Halo 3 kind of is for you. So
Halo 3 is the more perfect Halo game.
I think it's Halo Reach.
The Halo community backs me up. So.
The Halo community. Nice.
Yes. The internet, I suppose, at large.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're wrong.
If you want to see this debate be had in a much larger form, there are many a forum you can go.
Yes.
Browse. But.
So send your comments at We Got This Covered. Put them on the blog and stuff at We Got This Covered, and tell us what you think, and then we'll tell you you're wrong, no matter what.
Well, unless you're saying Halo 3 is the better one, which is the right answer. The universe agrees.
All right, well, Halo Reach is my number 3 favorite game of all time. Sean?
So I suppose that means it's time for my number 3 game of all time. Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, made by BioWare for the Xbox and the personal computer. It's interesting because this was in years past when we made a list very much like this one, but very much unlike this one. Knights of the Old Republic was my number 1 game at the time, and it was interesting making this list of now where I sort of rank this game, and I kind of feel sad, but it's very well justified that I bumped this down 2 slots because I really, really, really adore Knights of the Old Republic, and a big part of that is that I am a huge Star Wars fan. I love the movies, and I've engaged with the expanded universe in a lot of different ways. I've read a lot of the comic books, I've read several of the novels, the more acclaimed ones. And then I played quite a few of the video games, and there are a lot of really, really great Star Wars video games, and standing tall above all the others, to me, very much is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. And Knights of the Old Republic is not only the best Star Wars game ever made, but it's one of the best Star Wars things. If you are a fan of the Star Wars universe, Knights of the Old Republic is the perfect Star Wars video game, because it allows you to live in that Star Wars universe, but in a way that sort of maintains what you would sort of would have fallen in love with the original trilogy, because Knights of the Old Republic does not take place in the Star Wars timeline that you are familiar with.
So it's kind of I talked about Batman Arkham City being sort of video game, my perfect version of that thing I love. Is it kind of like Knights of the Old Republic, same thing for Star Wars?
Yeah, in a very similar way. One of the things that I love about it is that it's able to maintain the imagination of Star Wars by not having to tie itself down to the raw specifics of the original trilogy timeline or the prequel timeline. It's set thousands of years before the movies are in the Old Republic, and so it's at a time where there are a lot more Jedi. The Jedi Order is younger than and a lot less corrupt than the one you come to know, and sort of there is this Sith Empire that's not the actual. I'm not going to get into that. There's a Sith Empire led by Dark Jedi or whatever, and sort of it is this. It brings all this imagination back to it in a way that the prequels did not, and is able to make what is very familiar new again by rethinking what you know about the Star Wars universe and presenting it in new ways. So it's you don't run into any stormtroopers, but there are the Sith troopers kind of are like stormtroopers, but they have their own spin on it. And the Ebon Hawk is very similar to the Millennium Falcon in a lot of ways as a starship, but it has its own vibe, and there's a lot of stuff like that. Where it's they take what you know from Star Wars, it's they make it new again, they make it imaginative. BioWare made Star Wars their own with Knights of the Old Republic, and so as a Star Wars fan, that experience is sort of unparalleled because you get to live out this fantasy you have when you watch the movies of like being this roguish Jedi or whatever, like bopping across the galaxy, saving the universe, fighting the forces of evil. And
I would just be evil if I played it.
yes, and that is an option. And oh my god, can you be fucking evil in this game? Like I should say, when like I got this game when it came out on the Xbox, and I have played it to completion 4 times, which is no small feat because it's a pretty long goddamn game. But I've started the game like a billion goddamn times. Like I've made so many characters because my favorite section of the game is the sort of like the opening 8 hours or so of like being on Taurus, and then you go to Dantooine and become a Jedi, and that part of it is my favorite part of the game. But it's like when I went through. The first time I played it, I made a guy who was kind of evil. He was a little more on the dark side because I was just a kid when I played it, and it's like the dark side's all cool and stuff. And then when I played it through a second time, when I played it through the second time is when I really, really fell in love with the game, and I played it as a Jedi proper. And then I played it as a Jedi proper, but like a different kind of character, where I played a female character that also specialized in force powers instead. And then I played it through it again, and decided it's like I'm going to be evil again because it's like because the first time I played it, I also half-assed the evil part, and so like I played it through as evil, and it's like that is a hard thing to do at some point because I think the most memorable evil thing I did in Knights of the Old Republic was there's this one a really elaborate side quest on Dantooine where you first become a Jedi and you get assigned by the Council to this like being a Jedi is not all about like stabbing people with laser swords, like you're supposed to be this sort of like diplomat, peace negotiator type guy. So it's like there's this sort of Romeo and Juliet, Hatfield McCoy like family feud going on Dantooine between these two families, and we need you to negotiate a peace between them because one of them is accusing the other of like kidnapping their son, and there's like this whole elaborate thing going on, and basically it's like one of the families has this son, another family has the daughter, and the son and daughter fall in love or whatever. But the families hate each other, and one of a child, like the girl's brother or whatever for one of the families was killed in an accident, but that guy blames the other dude from the other family for his death, and so it's like they're like at each other's throats, and you finally get them to come together by like you sort of like are meant to encourage like the two lovers to run away, like that's the good side. But it's like you get this encounter where it's like the one guy goes to the other dude's estate with like war droids with blasters, and so that guy from the estate comes out with his own war droids, and you get in this argument where it's like their children are there, and you're arguing, and you have this ability, if you like do the conversation option right, to manipulate both of the sides to trick each other into suspecting that like the other person like did something that they didn't do, like that guy killed this guy's son, or it's like that you definitely kidnapped his daughter or whatever. And you're like able to manipulate that situation where like the one guy shoots the other guy's daughter in front of them. That guy then shoots that guy's son in front of him. And so then that guy shoots that guy, and then that guy's war droids shoot that guy, and then the war droids destroy each other. So it's like you're standing there, and it's like you could easily have just like cleared up this like misunderstanding and fixed this situation so easily. And instead, you've just told like 2 or 3 lies and caused everybody in this family to just kill each other and the goddamn droids to kill each other too. So it's just like a bloodbath. Everyone is dead. So if you have fantasies about using the magical powers of the Force to enact revenge and just like senseless chaos on the world, you can certainly do that in Knights of the Old Republic, or you can not be a complete monster, which I was in that instance, and actually play as the Jedi side, which I think the story is just a lot better, because it's like if you play as on the Jedi side, there's like this sort of like theme of redemption that comes out naturally from the story. That's very interesting, that like depending on the way you play the game, the themes very much change. But so that's like, I've talked a lot about how Knights of the Old Republic is just a fantastic Star Wars experience, but even if you strip out the Star Wars universe from the game itself, it's still an unbelievably fantastic RPG in the sense of the combat is sort of this pseudo real-time turn-based combat that's based on like a D&D like D20 type system, and that's really fun because it is really intense and a really difficult combat system that like you have to be on your ball in a lot of encounters to fucking just survive. And usually half the time, like, both of your companions will be passed out on the ground because they just got like choked half to death by a Sith warlord. And it's like the combat's really intense and a lot of fun. And I think like and it's also just really cinematic looking because since it's not quite real time, but like it's technically turn based, but it looks like stuff's happening in real time. But you like issue commands in a turn based fashion, which allows the combat to seem really cinematic. So when you get in lightsaber duels, the guys seem like they're really fighting in a way that's like with real time combat, like the animations wouldn't quite match up in a way that would make it look quite that good. So that's really awesome. And then it's got a really in depth, character creation, and you can make so many different kinds of characters that specialize in all these different fields, like balancing between combat, sort of like practical skills with hacking and stuff like that, and your force powers that can be applied in a lot of different ways. And then, so the combat is absolutely phenomenal. But then on top of it, you've got just an unbelievable story of that BioWare fashion, like one of the absolute BioWare bests, and BioWare is one of the best Western RPG developers of all time. And they sort of, I think, like in terms of just like raw story and how they like handle the story, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is the best Star Wars story that has been told. Like in particular, there's a twist about 3/4 of the way through that I'm not going to spoil here, but it is fucking amazing. Like it completely turns the game on its head, but it's not like an out of nowhere twist. It's like it feels sort of kind of like BioShock Infinite at the end, where it's like this feels very natural. What happens here? Like it's not a twist for a twist's sake. It's like this has been built up to and hinted at, but in such a clever way that it's like you don't see it coming. But it's like once it happens, you're like, oh shit, yes, okay, that makes so much sense. And so and BioWare, is well known for creating really interesting and well-written characters, and that is certainly the case here as well, where over the course of the game you amass a crew of people that you bring with you on your ship. So you've got, Bastila, the sort of like sassy British Jedi lady, and then you've got Mission, the sassy, not British, like 14-year-old Twi'lek who grew up on like in the understreets of Taurus, who befriended another companion you have, Zalbar, this big fucking Wookiee who, gives Chewbacca his run for his money in terms of being the best Wookiee in Star Wars stuff. Fucking Zalbar Big Z is really awesome.
I apologize really quickly for my phone going off there in a second. Sorry, Sorry, GPS thing went off. Didn't mean to. Sorry.
Yeah, but anyways. So, yeah, like, Knights of the Old Republic has amazingly written characters, an amazingly written story, and just one of the most engaging combat systems in an RPG I've found. And all of that wrapped up in a super sweet Star Wars chocolate coating is, that's a formula for success as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. This is one of the games I am saddest I have never played.
Yeah.
And I will hopefully rectify someday. I actually have it on my Mac, and I have since I bought it, but I've never played it.
So, it's a good game, to say the least. So,
yeah.
Knights of the Old Republic. Fuck yeah.
Is that all you have to say about it?
I think so, yeah.
All right. Well, then that's your number 3. Let's move on to my number 2 favorite game of all time. Mass Effect 2, also by BioWare, for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. PC is my second favorite game of all time, easily. I want to say right now, these last 2 games on the list fell into place immediately. There was no question at any point what my top 2 were. Very easy, and these are actually both games I wound up getting to this year, even though they were not games that came out this year.
Yeah.
So, Mass Effect 2, I should say right now, I have not finished the Mass Effect trilogy, and this is another one I really wish I could have finished it in time for this podcast. Was not able to. I just have not gotten around to playing 3. I finished 2, and I did 1 and 2 basically as a marathon, those 2. And I love them both just to death. And then I was going to play 3, started 3, and I don't want to say I got burned out, but it was like I felt like I probably should have taken a small break between those or something. Yeah. Because 3 looks a little different. Obviously, each game plays a little differently than the last. And I probably marathoned too much Mass Effect at once because, when these games came out, they came out over a period of years. And so I just wound up playing another game for a while. And I'll get back to 3 eventually and I'll play it. and I'll probably play all these games over and over again. But in any case, that does not at all affect my love for Mass Effect 2, nor should it.
Yeah.
Mass Effect 2 is just such an incredible game. And I think what you'll see for these last two titles, sort of the same basic judging system I've always had, is that characters and characterization are the most important things to me in storytelling. And nothing makes me love a story more than great character work. And these last two games on my list are sort of pure exercises in character study through video games. And Mass Effect 2, I love Mass Effect 1. That is a phenomenal game, I feel like. I don't even have the same problems with it a lot of people do, where I know the combat is technically kind of clunky, but I like it a lot, and I know it's improved in Mass Effect 2, but I still love Mass Effect 1, and I think it's great. But Mass Effect 2, what makes that such a masterpiece for me is that it is this ingeniously simple setup, which is Commander Shepard. Well, it starts off just crazy. Mass Effect 2, I want to say right off the bat, has one of the most batshit insane game openings ever.
Oh my god!
Where you think it's just you're on the Normandy, the characters are, and you're like, oh, we're just going to see them go on a mission or something, right? No, the Normandy gets fucked.
No kidding.
It gets bent over the table and fucked, and it gets blown to shit,
and you get fucking spaced.
Yes.
Oh man.
And then Mass Effect 2. In fact, I think you're like floating away.
Yeah, you're floating away, and then the title comes up around like the planet that you're kind of floating towards.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, that's what kind of game this is.
It's a game where you die in the first 5 minutes.
Yes, and so that first hour. That first hour is so disorienting because you're getting used to this new world and new status quo, and really what that's all in service towards is we've got a new villain this time around. They're connected to the Reapers.
Yeah.
They're the Collectors. They're coming, and you need to build a team to go on a suicide mission to stop them. Mm-hmm. And that's the story. That's it. There are some twists and turns in terms of what you have to do to stop them, but otherwise, what Mass Effect 2 is you building a team, getting to know that team, and getting them loyal to the point where they will die for you. Although you don't want them to die for you.
Yeah.
And that is so bold in its simplicity, Like, I have to wonder what the discussions were at BioWare where they sat down and said, Mass Effect 2 is going to be 100% about characters, and that we're going to be that bold in making it, that is our game.
Yeah.
And at that point, the player really has total control over the pace, over how you play it, over everything. And it is just, the characters are so, so fantastic. I love absolutely every one of them. And, of all the new ones, my favorite is Morden, because Morden sings you Gilbert and Sullivan if you talk to him enough. I love Morden. I think he's great, but I love all the new characters. I think they're just so fantastic. You've got just super badass people like Thane, who are really also very, very complex.
Yeah.
It's just, you've got the new version of Rex. Grunt, Krogan. I haven't played the game in a while, so I'm forgetting some of the race names. But yeah, and you meet some of your old friends along the way, And I know this is DLC, Lair of the Shadow Broker, but I lump it all in.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've got some great stuff with Liara in the DLC and whatnot. And then you've got the returning characters who are all made more compelling than ever before. Like, Garrus is an awesome character in 1. You really like him as your friend. But in 2?
God,
holy shit, Archangel.
And it's one of the best character reintroductions ever.
Maybe my
comes back.
Maybe my favorite I can think of because you're going through your dossiers, and I was sort of resigned to the fact early on that okay, I'm probably going to have an all new team this time around. And maybe I'll see Garrus sometime, but I wasn't thinking. I sure as hell wasn't expecting Garrus would just be one of my dossiers.
Yeah. You expected that it's like you would know Garrus is coming when Garrus is coming.
Yeah, and then it's Archangel, and Garrus comes in, and he's got scars, and he's fighting like these 3 basically like mafia families on this planet that he's all harassed to the point where they are all putting aside their differences just to try to kill him. Yeah. And so, Garrus is so great in this game, and you can fuck him if you're a female Shepard. Yeah. I should say I play as Fem Shep, and you can romance Garrus, and that's such a funny subplot. But everything's great. I mean, some of the best parts of Mass Effect 2 are you get back to the Normandy after a mission, and you make the rounds and talk to everyone. And there's such joy in that, and getting to know these characters. And, the most important character in terms of character study is Shepard, because that's the character you have total control of. And that is what is so brilliant about the general BioWare strategy of game design, but especially Mass Effect, and to a really high degree to me, Mass Effect 2, because this character is at such a crossroads here, is that you have total control over how this character is developed and what you want this character to be, and you have such a close connection. I mean, those dialogue trees are the most gripping parts of Mass Effect to me.
Yeah.
Because that's where you create the character, and you're creating that character on the fly through dialogue, making these choices. They all seem to have weight and meaning, at least in how you read that character and how that character interacts with the world around her. That's you get such a high connection to that. I always say her when I'm talking about Commander Shepard, because my Commander Shepard's a woman. You would always say he, because you played Shepard as a guy. So it's
one of my Shepards was a guy.
So you have this, your connection to Shepard is so personal and absolutely singular to the point where when I watch another person like my brother play a Mass Effect game and like they have a different version of Shepard, I'm like, that's insulting. That is not Shepard. It just doesn't feel right. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't imagine going through and playing them again with a different Shepard. I probably will one day, but it'll be really weird and disorienting. And I feel like in Mass Effect, 1, they did a great job with that, but in 2, they drive it even further, especially because this is all a game about character study.
Yeah.
And getting to know these people. And so, how I would sum up Mass Effect 2 being my second favorite game of all time is something I didn't even realize how connected I was to the game until you go for the suicide mission. And the level of emotional investment I had going into that mission was something I had never felt in a game before. I don't know if I'd ever felt that in a story before.
Yeah.
Like, the closest you could come to that is TV, like a long, multi-season TV show where they get to a climax or something. But here in Mass Effect 2, I've spent 30 hours playing with these people. I mean, I fucking 100% in Mass Effect. I did everything I could in Mass Effect 2. I bought every piece of DLC. I was just playing everything. And I think I was close to level capped when I got to the suicide mission.
Yeah.
But you go on that suicide mission, and tensions are just so high because you're ready to die, but you don't want any of these people to die. And that suicide mission is just such a fantastic climax.
Did anyone die when you did it? I don't remember.
I guess I must have done something wrong before because Kasumi died on the way there. Like, in terms of what I actually had control over during the suicide mission, no.
No, but you mean during after you go through the Omega 4 relay?
Yeah, she died. Yeah.
And when you said on the way there, I was just like, it just sounded like okay, guys, we're going to the Omega 4 relay, and we're going to take this fight to the collectors. Okay, everybody, let's get out here before we hop through. Where is Kasumi? She OD'd on cocaine in the bathroom. God, shit, God damn it.
I always felt bad that Kasumi died. I felt really bad because, for one, I love the DLC where you get Kasumi.
Yeah.
It's just this great caper. It's like a caper flick in Mass Effect.
Yeah.
And then, but Kasumi, she comes aboard because, you think she can help and she's risking her life, but she has no inherent reason she needs to come. And then she dies before you even get there.
For you, she did.
Yeah. So I don't know how that set of circumstances arises, but yeah, that's what happens for me. But in any case, so yeah. And Mass Effect 2, again, Mass Effect 2 just tells this one, simple story with all this character work so perfectly that I will get around to playing 3 eventually, but I don't necessarily get to the end of it. And it has kind of the cliffhanger-y thing where the Reapers are coming.
It doesn't have, it hasn't, the appropriate ending because as the character stuff is so important, but, the plot ending is not really there for Mass Effect 2 because it's the second part of a trilogy.
Right, but in any case, I feel like Mass Effect 2 can just exist as its own kind of perfect game on its own.
Yeah.
It's great. And obviously, so much of what makes it great is that you bring in your character from one. And so this is continuing a story from another game. And it's I just had never seen anything like that before, that importing a character where I loved Mass Effect 1, I had such a high connection, and then I'm playing a whole new game, but there's my character, just as I made her, and now she's got badass scars, and, I'm still continuing to develop this character. And to me, there's just nothing else like Mass Effect, and Mass Effect 2 is so far the best version of that I've played, and I love it to death, and I think I've said everything I have to say about Mass Effect 2. I mean, no, I haven't, because I haven't even touched on the freaking gameplay, because the gameplay is great. They've really made the actual combat and stuff, they've really refined it to perfection in Mass Effect 2. Mm-hmm. And it's so much fun, it's so addictive, it's so fast. That's the thing about Mass Effect 1, is that it's kind of slow. It almost feels turn-based to a degree, because you always have to go into that sub-menu to pick your attack.
Pause the combat all the time.
Right. And in 2, you have to do it a couple times if you want to use a special attack that's not mapped to your controller, but otherwise, it's really fast-paced, it's really intense, it's very challenging, but it's fair, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So... And I love the graphic design of Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2 visually is one of my very favorite games ever. And I've never seen a game that uses orange that prominently in its color scheme.
That's one of the things about all the Mass Effect games I think are great. Is it's like they all have their own sort of like primary color scheme they play off of. And Mass Effect 2's being orange is really interesting because it's not one that's not like a primary color scheme that usually people use.
And I'm actually a big fan of the grain filter they do on it. I just being a sort of a film fan, I really love how they kind of make it. There's this more tactile quality to it because it has that layer of grain on it. That I kind of miss in what I've played of 3. And I think they toned it down enough from 1, because it was probably overbearing in 1.
Yeah, it was pretty overbearing in 1.
But in 2, it's like just the perfect amount, and it makes every graphic just pop that much more to me. And it just looks great. So, and tremendous voice acting throughout, obviously, also. It's such a great game. Easily my second favorite game of all time. Love Mass Effect 2. Play it if you haven't. Obviously, play Mass Effect 1 first.
Yeah.
But that's my number 2. Sean, you want to talk about your number 2?
I think I will talk about my number 2 favorite video game of all time. Mass Effect trilogy by BioWare. This may seem familiar to you for some reason. I don't know. I feel like we were just talking about it or something.
Yeah, so my number 2 favorite game is just Mass Effect 2. Your number 2 is all 3 of them combined.
Yes.
No,
they were released all together as a retail product earlier this year. So, fuck you. Mass Effect trilogy counts. And it was actually something I had to think a lot about of like how I was going to handle this one specifically. Because
I think it counts. It's easy.
Yeah. Because like I personally justify it as that like it is all one story, and in a very like even like mechanical gameplay sense, because you do carry your same Shepard all through the games.
And even between 2 and 3, your level carries over and stuff.
And like where it really sealed the deal for me was with Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 is where it would come down to which one is the best game. But it was like, if I'm just considering it completely on its own merits, ignoring that any other games even exist, Mass Effect 2 is the best game in the Mass Effect franchise. But if you look at it as a whole series and a whole trilogy, and in that sense, I think Mass Effect 3 has the most, for me, emotionally resonant material because it's building off of everything that came before it so fantastically. So it's like, I couldn't... Like, if it was clear that Mass Effect 2 would just be the best one no matter what, I probably would have just picked that one. But since it was like, Mass Effect 3 is better if you look at it from a certain perspective, or Mass Effect 2 is better from a different perspective for me, it's like, fuck it, it's all 3 of them. So that's why it's the Mass Effect trilogy for me. And for me, I have a very different experience with these games than you do, because I played them when they came out, whereas you sort of like played 1 and 2 like way after they came out, sort of like together back to back. And obviously, I was a huge fan of Knights of the Old Republic, the last BioWare... Well, okay, there was another one, but they're like for me, the last BioWare RPG I had played, and it was like, what are these guys going to do next? Like, we've got new consoles, Xbox 360, like, what is this going to be? They've been advertising, they're making a whole new fucking IP, it's going to be like sci-fi space shit. It's like Mass Effect, it seems awesome. And honestly, when it first came out and the first time I played it, I was kind of disappointed in Mass Effect 1. And it was like, it was still a really good game, but I couldn't feel the magic in it the way like something like Knights of the Old Republic hit me. And I was like, I didn't know why, and it was like, I played it once, and I was like, well, it was good, but I didn't fall in love with it. And then like a year later, we got sort of like Mass Effect 2 was on the horizon, and I was like, I'm going to replay Mass Effect 1. But I want to do it, but I'm going to make a new character this time, because I didn't have a huge attachment to my first Commander Shepard, who was kind of renegade and kind of Paragon, like he wasn't a really good guy or a really bad guy. So then my second time around, instead of Gordon Shepard, I made James T. Shepard, in honor of Captain Kirk. And this Shepard, I was like, I'm going to do what I did with Knights of the Old Republic. Whereas, like, when I really fell in love with Knights of the Old Republic, I played just, like, super kind of Boy Scout-y, like, light side stuff. And that's really appropriate for Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic because it's a Star Wars game, and Star Wars is such a morally simplistic universe, where Mass Effect has a lot of shades of gray, and so that's why I didn't approach it that way initially. And I was like, I'm just gonna go full on Paragon like, come hell or high water, no matter what, I'm going to be Paragon, like, in fucking everything. And for a weird reason, that kind of blew open the game and, like, really made me engage with it, because I ended up playing a character that was very different from myself and made very different decisions than I would normally make, and that forced me to role-play the game in a very real sense. And it was one of the earliest times I really role-played and, like, felt that role-playing, because it's not like, you know, I love Knights of the Old Republic, but when you look at it now, and most RPGs now like that, when you're trying to, like, look at it from, like, the definition of that term, a role-playing game, sort of how it relates to something like Dungeons and Dragons, where, like, the great role-playing game, you realize, like, Knights of the Old Republic is so simplistic, because you have such a limited option, and all the options are not particularly fleshed out in how you behave your character, you know, like, and you've got, like, in dialogue responses, you've got, like, this one text sentence that you pick that's not, like, voice acted or anything, because it's, like, the thought at the time was that would break immersion too much, and a lot of people still believe that, and that's a fine opinion to have. But then when I, like, sort of engaged Mass Effect in a way that was like, I'm not going to make Shepard be me, I'm going to make Shepard Shepard, that's when I saw the beauty and the magic behind their decision to have, like, this dialogue wheel that was like, you're going to pick, like, this vague what the response more or less is like, and then Shepard is going to respond in his or her own way, like, elaborate on what your, like, vague sort of dialogue choice is, and, like, voice act that in, like, sort of Shepard becomes their own character. And so if you let Shepard be his or her own character, and instead of, like, just trying to make Shepard a vessel for yourself, I think the game becomes so much more magical, because it's like, okay, now I have to play this character. Like, this character is not just me, like, this is Shepard, and I have to become Shepard. I have to get into this Shepard mindset, like, I have to, and that sort of opens up all the stuff behind the character of, like, trying for me to try to justify and explain why Shepard is acting the way he's acting. Like, why would this person be this Paragon, but, like, my Shepard, you know, that you can pick a backstory, and he has, like, my Shepard had, like, the most tragic backstory you could have. He was, like, the sole survivor, like, you know, was born on an off-Earth colony where it's, like, that was, like, a terrible place to live. So he has this terrible background, and it was, like, at a certain point, I was, like, my Shepard is such a people pleaser at a certain point of, like, no matter what's going on, no matter who he's talking to, he gives people the answers they want to hear so he can get what he needs out of them. And like, just click this, like, my Shepard's a complete fucking sociopath. Like, he has no... He can socially manipulate people, but he has no true social connection with almost anybody. And, like, you're able to create this character, create this subtext behind the scenes, and that, like, just felt so magical to me, and that was, like, something I'd never really done in a game up to that point. And that's sort of like a similar experience I had with Red Dead Redemption, where it's like I cut my teeth on Mass Effect, and it's like brought those skills to bear for Red Dead Redemption that helped me enjoy that game a lot too.
And what you're saying about Mass Effect here, that's exactly what I mean when I say you do the character study of Shepard on the fly while you're making that character. You know, you're deciding who he or she will be, and you're diving into the character as you do that. And I tend to play it not strictly Paragon or Renegade. I'm lean to the Renegade side, as you might imagine.
Yes, because you're a horrible monster.
But I just try to go with every choice. I'm like, in my conception of Shepard as I understand her so far, what choice would she make here, and how would this play with the character? What should this mean for her going forward? So it's sort of like that's what's so fun about the dialogue trees, is it's always making you think about the character and actively interpreting. Yeah.
And when I was talking about Persona, you know, and I was saying, like, RPGs have a really significant pacing problem in that, like, their primary mechanic being combat usually does not have, like, there's nothing intrinsically narrative about the combat in most RPGs, and so it's really contrary to where all the focus in an RPG goes to, which is the narrative and the characters and the story and that aspect of it. And so Mass Effect turns dialogue into its own gameplay mechanic, because, you know, the dialogue wheel and, like, the mystery, like trying to fill in for yourself, like, who Shepard is and all that kind of stuff is so much more engaging and fascinating, and feels so much more cinematic than sort of a Knights of the Old Republic style, like, you just have text responses to people and then they voice act at you. You know, it's like these characters are having this conversation, and I can move the conversation in directions, but I am not the master of the conversation. Like, it's not like I pick exactly the words that are said and then Shepard just spouts them out or something. And so for Mass Effect 1, that's where the magic really opened up. And then there's, you know, the Mass Effect universe in general is one of the best things about Mass Effect, where it is so well realized in such intricate detail to like all the different species and the technology, and just, it feels so lived in, like the best sci-fi universes are, and feels scientifically plausible in the sense of like the major sci-fi thing they do outside of like having aliens and stuff in terms of the technology is that they just have this thing they call element zero. And element zero is just like, a made-up element that, obviously does not exist on the actual periodic table. It's like this made-up element, and when you pass an electrical charge through it, if you pass, I believe, a positive charge through EZO, element zero, it creates like a mass field around it that increases the mass of the objects within that field. And if you put a negative charge in there, it decreases the mass. And so that one allowance, sort of like accept that this element zero exists and it does these things, allows for all the technology, allows for the faster than light travel, allows for the guns that like the Mass Effect guns are the best ones, because the Mass Effect guns just have like a block of metal in them. This is how they explain it. That it's just like a block of metal, and then the gun just like cuts off a tiny sliver and then just shoots it at near near speed of light speeds. Because through like the Mass Effect field stuff, that's the coolest, and that's why it almost has. That's why there is no ammo. It's just because it's like you've just got a fat block of metal. Like you almost never need to reload this thing.
That's actually something that disappointed me in 2 and 3. Is that I understand for gameplay mechanics why they took
that
out.
It's a lot more satisfying. Makes a lot more sense to reload a gun in terms of gameplay. But yeah,
but I love this. The like narrative like allowance for that is so great. I love that in 1.
So fucking cool. Like, and there's just so much about like some of my most fun with Mass Effect is just sitting down when I've gotten really far into the game and just like going to that codex menu that I like have barely looked at so far and having like, I'm going to read and listen to every single one of these entries, and it's just like, so it's like I know all like super useless information, like Krogans have 4 testicles and fucking Turians are silicon-based life forms that are sort of vaguely avian in origin. Like that's, it's completely useless information, but it's like they just have thought out so much, and it's like, well, it makes me want to engage with it and like want to learn all this information that they thought out and put out there in the game in their codex. So it's like the Mass Effect universe, and Mass Effect 1 is such a fantastic introduction to that universe that it sets the building blocks for Mass Effect 2. And so then moving into Mass Effect 2, I had already created James T. Shepard, like the Shepard that I loved. So going into Mass Effect 2, I was full in on Mass Effect. And Mass Effect 2 is, especially when it came out, was to me such a fucking revelation of taking what was a lot of the really clunky elements of Mass Effect 1, which there were a lot of very clunky elements of the original Mass Effect, particularly when it came out. Technologically, it had a lot of glitches and stuff. And Mass Effect 2 felt so polished, so streamlined in the best way possible, where it's like, you don't need to go onto a planet and have, like, I enjoyed the exploration elements of Mass Effect 1, but they were so unrefined and felt like not nearly enough attention was paid to that. And so it's like, if you're having this much more focused experience like Mass Effect 2, it's like, if you want to have your side missions, it's like you just get down there, you land where the side mission is, you do the goddamn side mission, and like that's it. And it's like that's a much more, it's a much quicker. You just get into it and get out of it, and it just feels like, okay, like this is a much. It's like it feels like a really well edited movie. It's just like there's no fat on this at all. You just get in there, you do what needs to be done, and you get out, and that's it. And it's just so great in that way. There's like no fat on Mass Effect 2 at all. And it's so rare for that to be the case for video games, because video games are so often padded to fucking shit. So Mass Effect 2 is just one of the best video games ever made, particularly in terms of what it did for like showing. It's like, yeah, if you want to make an RPG, you don't have to have an overly complex inventory and like a dozen different like equipment slots, and you don't have to have this massive like tree that like you don't have to hit level 60, and that's like the level cap is all the way up there, and you've got like a billion different skills that you can put a point into, but each individual point is completely insignificant because it's 1 point of like 50 or whatever. That's not what an RPG is. An RPG is about the story and the characters, and the gameplay needs to exist around that, not the other way around. You don't need to be tied to this old understanding of what RPG has to be. So, like, Mass Effect 2 was like, fuck it. Like, in this universe, like, combat is just it's a fucking third-person cover-based shooter. Like, that's what the combat would be like. You don't need to have, like, tack on this like old school like Power Wheel that like with a billion different powers on it. Fuck that. It's like we're making it action packed, we're making it streamlined. You've got like 5 different powers, but you really only need to focus on using 2 of them or 3 of them that are all like hot buttons. So it's like you don't need to pause the action all the time, and it is in your face. It is engaging. And that was amazing. It's like,
and it's one of the best examples ever of a developer looking at their first game saying, what did we do right? What did we do not as right?
Yeah.
And then just coming up with so many ideas to make it better and working as hard as they could to improve it.
Not being afraid of changing something. Just like not being afraid of, alienating people by changing something that they really love. They're like, no, we need to... Mass Effect 2 is a very different game in a lot of ways in terms of just how it tackles the story stuff. And so it's like naturally everything else needs to evolve around that. So it's like they really focused on what needed to be focused on. And that was like the story and character stuff. And it's like made the gameplay sort of serve it to that. And as you said when you were talking about Mass Effect 2, like the characters, particularly the character work in Mass Effect 2, is so amazing because they focus all on that. And the structure of the game of I'm going to go around, I'm going to assemble this team, and then you have the loyalty missions for each of the team members, and it's like each loyalty mission is like an hour to maybe 3 hours long for the longer ones. And they all sort of like tell a personal story of each of these crew members. So you come to like know and love them in like all these different ways. And each one of those like loyalty missions feel like these like great little tiny sci-fi stories in their own right. Like I think one of the most memorable is Jacob's, where Jacob, his father, has been lost for a really long time out in space, and you get a distress signal from his ship that he was on, and you land on the planet, and you find out that Jacob has become this ruler of the crew of the ship who have all eaten these plants that have like had like this hallucinogenic element in them that like has sort of like eroded their brain functions over time, so they've become completely servile to Jacob's father, and he sort of just like reigned over these people as like this disgusting like sex despot. And like makes his own like pleasure paradise at the expense of like this like 100 people that were the crew of the ship. And it's like, and there are a lot of different ways you can deal with that situation, and that's like one of the cool things about the game that I played Mass Effect 2 through completion, both like sort of like mostly Paragon, mostly Renegade, is seeing like all the different ways those situations can play out, and they're all really awesome and fucking cool in their own way. And so yeah, like the character stuff is amazing. And I think the best part of all of Mass Effect 2 is the suicide mission. Because particularly going into it when the game came out, the suicide mission, like you knew about that before the game came out. Like they were out there saying people can die. Like seriously, in terms of story, they will die and they will stay dead for Mass Effect 3. And like that was fucking terrifying. So when you get to the suicide mission, you're like, I was so tense. I was just like, anyone can die at any moment, and they make those cutscenes such that it's like Garrus could have died there. And like I fought for like it's just like your heart almost stops. It's just like the cutscene seems like he's probably going to. Oh wow, they're going to kill Garrus, and it's like okay, oh Jesus, okay, he's alive.
What did me in was the final sort of part of that where it was me and Garrus and Morden was the team I selected fighting the big human Reaper, and they're falling on that big panel that like falls off, and it looks like Garrus and Morden are just going to fall into oblivion.
Yeah.
I was like, no! What did I do?
Yeah. But yeah, for like that suicide mission, that's just so brilliant. Because particularly for like this series, which is like one of the only game series to do this thing where you carry through specifically your character and all that information through to the other games, like knowing that it's like, if these people die, like either I have to play through the whole fucking game or like reload a save or whatever, like I need to like go back through and make sure they don't die, or it's like you are stuck with this reality where it's like Morden got like eaten by like alien like swarm monsters. It's like, and just like he would be dead in Mass Effect 3, and that's like, was so terrifying. It like elicited an emotional response unlike any other, because it was like there was such real consequence to that suicide mission, and the first time I played it, nobody died, and to this day I've played Mass Effect 2 to completion 3 different times. I still cannot play the suicide mission and have anyone die. Like I just like every time I get to it, I'm like, I just want to see what it's like. Like I just want to know, and it's like, but when it comes to the choice, it's like, I'm not going to I can't send Jacob down the little tube that you send the tech people down and have him die. Like, I just can't do that. I can't be that guy who just kills someone just to see it, because I love all those characters so much.
I could do it. Jacob's kind of, he's not all that interesting.
I like Jacob.
I'm kidding. I like Jacob.
He's not the most interesting character on the crew. But
I would not kill
He's
Jacob.
not meant to be the most interesting character on the crew.
No, and actually, Jacob, I like that you mentioned his loyalty mission, because I forget about that one, because Jacob is not the flashiest character, but damn it if he doesn't have one of the best loyalty missions.
Yeah, without a doubt. So yeah, the suicide mission, stroke of fucking genius. And then Mass Effect 3 comes out, and it's like I had such a weird experience with Mass Effect 3 because I knew we were going to be recording a podcast with it, and so I wanted, and also I was a freshman in college, and so I did not have a 360 up in my dorm, and so it's like Mass Effect 3 came out, it's like, I need to play Mass Effect 3, so I went home where my Xbox was, and it's like, for the weekend, it's like, I played all of Mass Effect 3 just on that weekend, and it's like, I finished it at like 4 in the morning or whatever. It's my favorite thing playing video games. Like, the best video games, you finish as dawn, like you play through the night, and it's like you finish it when like the sun's coming up. That is when you know you have like had a great experience with a video game, is when that happens. And so I did that with Mass Effect 3, like played that fucking like marathon that motherfucker, and that is like just an absolutely emotionally exhaustive experience. It was unbelievable for me. Like it has elicited an emotional response, only matched by one other thing that we will talk about at some point. But it's like, that game is so powerful in how it wraps up all these storylines being built up across like 40 hours of gameplay for that one character. And it's like getting to this point is just like seeing all these characters. And Mass Effect 3 is so fucking dark because the game opens with the Reapers are here already. They fucking have attacked Earth, basically destroyed almost all of Earth. Like humanity is being fucked in the ass, and so is the rest of the galaxy. And so it's like, you know you're fucked. Like, you know you're fucked. You stand no goddamn chance fighting against the Reapers. So you, like, the entire game is like, you're just grasping at straws of like, we need to find something to fight back. And, you know, you collect your crew, and you're trying to, like, you know, just get, like, Prothean weapons and shit, and, like, figure out what can we do to fight against the Reapers, and it's, like, this desperate, like, hopeless struggle against the inevitable in Mass Effect 3 is so incredible. And, you know, there was a huge controversy when it came out of, like, most people hated the ending. Like, hated it to the extent that they harassed BioWare so much that BioWare released, like, an extended ending DLC to, like, further explain what happened in the ending to Mass Effect 3. And I am one of the few people, the proud, who I love. Like, it's not that I think it's an okay ending. I think the ending to Mass Effect 3 is amazing and is exactly what it needs to be. Like, and it's like it is such an ending to that franchise that I have not played a Mass Effect game since I've finished Mass Effect 3. Like, I just can't bring myself to do it because it's like, it's done. Like, that's story finished. Like, I just can't play. Like, so I haven't played, like, the extended ending DLC. I haven't played any of the Mass Effect 3 DLC, even though I want to play the Citadel one, because I've heard that Citadel DLC, the last one they did, is absolutely amazing. But it's like, I can't bring myself to go back to that universe, because it's like, it's done. Like, I saw it to completion, and it's like, the way it handles the themes of death and the struggle against the hopeless is so engaging and just emotionally impactful for me. That's like, I just can't do it. I can't play Mass Effect anymore because it ended so damn good for me.
Yeah. I actually refuse, when I play Mass Effect 3, I specifically will refuse to watch it with the extended cut DLC because I just want to see what everyone else saw.
Yeah. It's like
and if it's...
Man, like, particularly for Mass Effect 3, there's, like, two different things. Like, the way, like, because you get so attached to all the characters, but in particular, Tali, Liara, and Garrus, who are, like, three characters that carry through like, all three games in a very significant capacity. Like, well, like, with the DLC for 2, for Liara, that was, like, just because Liara was my love interest for Mass Effect 1, and I mostly remained loyal to her in 2. And then, like, in 3, she comes back as, like, she's on your ship. She can be your love interest. Like, the relationship with Liara was just so well realized to me that it's, like, just felt so engaged. And then Garrus also, they develop him as, like, he's your best bud in, like, the best way possible. And there are just some scenes with all those characters that are unfucking believable. They're so well written. And just, like... parts of Mass Effect 3, from a certain perspective, could maybe be seen as pandering in the sense of, like, every single loose end gets wrapped up in a way that is, like, maybe feels unnatural, but it's like, you just crave that so much. You crave that that conclusion and that like just like those final moments with these characters. It's like you want everything to be wrapped up. You want to run into Jacob again or whatever. You want to see again all these people you've been with on this journey one last time. And I think Mass Effect 3 delivers on that, and that makes it such a whole trilogy to me. The way Mass Effect 3 ends, that Mass Effect trilogy is easily my number 3 games of all time. So.
Yep, I love it too, and I my hope is that once I finish 3, we could do on a slow week just an episode talking about the trilogy in depth, because I think it deserves that. So we should hopefully do that someday. But for now, it is time to announce my number 1 favorite game,
Halo Wars,
of all time, and it is not fucking Halo Wars, Sean.
Okay.
All right, my number 1 game. Persona 4, specifically Persona 4 The Golden, as that is the version I have played. That is the PlayStation Vita remake from 2012, which I bought a Vita to play, and then bought the game, and best purchase of my life. Best like $200 I have ever fucking spent, because Persona 4 is not just my favorite game. It is easily one of my favorite stories, media, experiences ever. You know, movies, TVs, games. This is in the, I'm making an amalgamated version of all that. This is top 5. This is possibly top 3. Persona 4, I love so goddamn much. I don't even know where to start. Luckily, Sean, Persona 4 was your 4th favorite game of all time.
Yeah, so we had to start.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. You talked about the mechanics, and I'll just quickly summarize that. I think, in short, the structure of the day-to-day life simulation, where you're just immersed in the town and the lives of your friends through the social links and the school activities, combined with the other half of the dungeon system, makes for what I think is the single best balanced game I have ever played, where you just never get tired of doing one thing, because another, possibly even more exciting thing is always right around the corner. So if I'm in the dungeon and I'm feeling like, man, I've been in this dungeon a while, save, go back to the main Inaba, and go do some social links. And then if I'm like, I kind of want to do some dungeon again, go back there. And if you're tired of both of those things, there's plenty of other things to do.
Yeah, like fishing.
There's not fishing.
There is fishing.
Oh, there is?
Yes, you can fish in the Weird River. I mean, you don't. It's not a significant part of the game.
Yeah, I thought you were making...
I did it because I did fucking everything.
Right. So yeah, there's always things to do, and I think the pace of the game is just tremendous. And I can't even imagine a better paced version of this game. I mean, I think the one pacing issue I have with Golden is that there is a bonus ending at the end.
That's lame. But...
And it would have been fine if they had put it after the credits. The only issue is that they did the credits after it, which is just kind of a bizarre choice.
Yeah, because Persona 4 ends, like the original Persona 4 ends on such the perfect moment that it ends on. So, yeah.
So, but that's a pretty easy thing to overlook. And other than that, I think the game is so perfectly paced. Even if, there are parts of the game where you are essentially watching cutscenes for hours on end.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't ever mind it, because it's never a chore. I mean, Atlas always knows when it's time to just kind of soak up the lives of these characters and get a window into their friendships. So you have these great event scenes where you're going to the beach, or you are going on a camping trip, or you get in a rock band. And you get in a rock band, and Naoto's on the keyboards, and Teddy's got the fucking, tambourine.
And Narukami plays fucking bass, because Narukami's a badass.
Narukami is a friggin' badass. And so, obviously, Sean talked about the mechanics. I want to talk about the story and characters, because that is what matters so much to me in Persona 4. As you said, you explained it all perfectly, that the gameplay side of it is just flawless. They got it down pat 100%, and so it's so much fun to play. Yeah. And I think the story and character side, to me, what's so impressive is that all of that stems so clearly out of the gameplay, and the gameplay clearly stems out of the story and characters. And so it really feels like, Persona 4, the basic story is it's a mystery. There's some murders happening in the town of Inaba. You are Yu Narukami. You move into this small town of Inaba. You're from the big city. You make some friends, and you're going to solve this murder case. You awaken to your Persona power. You start going into TVs. People are being thrown into TVs. You meet a guy in a teddy bear suit.
But it's just a teddy bear suit.
I know, it's empty. He takes it off. It's a teddy bear suit. It's fucking weird.
Yeah.
But it's great weird. And then, the main focus here, as in Mass Effect 2, this is a character study. And it's just a long-form character study. And while Persona 4 has a more involved plot than Mass Effect 2, obviously, the plot is always about moving forward the characters, I think. Yeah. And it's always, sort of in many ways allegorical to what the characters are going through. And it's about pushing these characters in areas where they need to go as people to become fully mature. Not even fully mature adults, because that's not the arc of the game. But it's the steps they need to take in this year of their lives, Yeah. And Sean, when you first talked about the game on the podcast, which is the first time I think I ever heard about it in depth from you, you talked about how this really is a story about human psychology.
Yes.
And I think, on my end, if you do not find yourself and your own problems somewhere in Persona 4, you don't have a beating heart.
Yeah.
Everybody will relate to something in this game, even if it's something that you don't necessarily expect to. Like, the character I relate most strongly to, as I explained on our 6-hour podcast, is Naoto. And it's not because I switched genders.
Because you're secretly a girl.
Yeah, I'm secretly a girl. No, that's not why I relate to
podcast listeners.
That's not why I relate to Naoto, and it's not. I don't think it's ever. You watch it. It's going to be something like literal with Persona 4, like you are a young detective who disguises herself as a boy. But it's that issue of with Naoto, it's about making the world see what you want them to see to get what you want.
Yeah,
and it's this very sort of basic issue that they do so beautifully. And beyond that, just the basic psychological, emotional issues it raises, and it's just so openly raw in dealing with that. And when I think of Persona 4, my main memories are all the scenes, usually in social links, when the sad music comes in, and it's the characters just opening up and getting the moments of honesty, and the writing in those scenes, and often the voice acting is so piercing. It's just, they leave nothing off the table. They are going to confront these issues, and they confront them very well and very strongly and very persistently, because it's a 70 to 90 hour game, and you are immersed in this. And it's often, it is just emotionally crushing. And this is, of the two Persona games where, we talk about, Persona 3 and 4 are the ones we've played. Persona 3 is obviously the darker game, and while Persona 4 is more cheerful and optimistic in its ideology, it's still very hard-hitting.
Yeah, it's got its dark moments,
to be
sure.
Yeah, and,
Especially about that.
Everything with Nanako.
Yes, Nanako.
Poor fucking Nanako. But then, I think of that, and I think of all the beautiful moments you share with Nanako where you do make her life better, where you and your friends cook dinner or something. Mm-hmm. And you arguably make her life better, because Yukiko's a terrible chef. Yeah. So is Chie. So anyway, but it really gets into these issues, and then beyond that, the characters are just such fantastic characters. And I love all of them. Yeah. And what I love most of all in this sort of dungeon gameplay system is that each month, each dungeon you go through, for the first half of the game at least, is you getting a new character. And the dungeon is all about, while you're going through that dungeon, you're gaining a better understanding of what that character's issues are, because this is a manifestation of their psyche. Yeah. And the confrontations with their shadow, and then the big boss fights, the gameplay and the story are never separate in that way, And it works so well that way. And I love all of that so much. And when you get your team together, and the more you get to know these characters, and I love how everyone just becomes such great friends, and all the scenes you have of just them bonding, it really does feel like there, again, as I said, there are cutscenes that just kind of go on maybe for hours sometimes. Mm-hmm. But that's always rewarding, because when you get to those points in the game, you need to just soak up the lives of these characters and be with them and understand them better as a unit of friends. And it's also just got great, phenomenal music by Shoji Meguro, and these wonderful, beautiful graphics and general sense of just atmosphere. I think that's what Persona 4 nails maybe most clearly to my mind, is it just doesn't feel like anything else, including Persona 3. Yeah. It is a world unto itself, and that atmosphere to it of Inaba and of these characters and of the general style of the game is utterly singular, and you'll never see anything else like it, and the time you spend with that game is so unique, and I love that about it. I think the battle system, as you said, is just so much fun. Best I've ever seen in a JRPG. Yeah, definitely. And it's so creative in just filling out all the details of this world, all the little side characters and the locations. Virtually every social link is just a home run.
And you can't forget about how much fun the fishing minigame is.
Yes, obviously. So, and more than anything else for me, if I want to sum up why Persona 4 is my favorite game of all time, it's just, there's so many great memories for me. There's the memories of the first time you meet Yosuke and Chie and Yukiko, and you go into the TV for the first time. That will always stick out in my head. The memories of, meeting Teddy and being like, what the fuck is Teddy? and exploring Inaba for the first time and it's a very kind of small world, but the first time you see it, you really get to explore it and to get to know it. And I have so many strong memories of that. And I remember whenever I think of Persona 4 Nanako saying, "Hey, big bro," every single time you come home, and just making you shed a tear.
Yeah.
And all the memories of the different field trips and the fun, lighthearted moments, the rock band and that kind of stuff. But then the memories of the hard times I mentioned before, and all the struggles and the emotional and moral confusion, especially in the stretch of the game where you think you know the killer's identity, but you really don't, and it's just
and then that other part where you think you know the killer's identity,
right.
You don't.
I'm meaning near the end, I guess.
Okay.
The hospital scene.
Okay.
Yeah. And all the memories of the different social links, the one that probably sticks out in my mind when I think of Persona 4 is the one they added specifically for Golden, one of two, which is Marie, the character who lives in the Velvet Room. And all the memories
Stuffed in the corner.
Yep, and the memories of my two probably favorite characters in the game, which are probably Kanji and Naoto. Love them so much. Just so many great memories. Playing Persona 4 really is, to me, like kind of living a full life. You feel like you live that year, and you come out on the other side of it feeling like that all happened, and it mattered, and that it will always stay with you. And I think that's really something only a video game can deliver, because not only is it long form, but you are interactive. You are the driving force to it.
Yeah.
And, Persona 4 does not have the system of deep role-playing, where, like in Mass Effect, where you really are driving every decision that character makes, but you are connected enough to that character that you feel like you are living their life.
Yeah.
And so you come out of it feeling like you did live this life. To me, that defines the power of gaming, and to me, of everything I've ever experienced, Persona 4 does it best. It is both the best game I've ever played and my favorite. Love it to death. Persona 4, my favorite game of all time.
All right, then.
So, Sean...
I certainly think that is a fair choice.
All right. Sean, your favorite game of all time.
Yes, it is now, at long last, my number one favorite game of all time. Persona 3 FES, my number one game of all time, easily one of my favorite things I have ever experienced in my entire life, and it's fucking shit, dude. Like, I don't even know where to start.
Can I say something really quick?
Sure.
About Persona 3. Persona 3 is a game, obviously I played Persona 4 as my favorite game of all time. I have been playing Persona 3. I'm about halfway through it. I wanted to finish it in time for this podcast because I knew it would be either my number 1 or 2 about 10 hours into that game, and I didn't have time to finish it. It is a very long game, obviously.
Yes.
And I love Persona 3. Hopefully I can contribute to this discussion a little bit, but it's not on my list. It probably would be if I had finished it. It would be at number 1 or 2. It's an honorable mention because of that, but I'll let Sean go now, and because he has actually finished the game, and it is his favorite. So why is it your favorite game ever?
Like I said, it's hard. I feel like when I first brought up, because this is the first time we're really talking about Persona 3, I feel like the first time I brought up Persona 4 as my number 0 game of 2012, it's just like, how do you even fucking explain this thing? But it's like, the gameplay is basically the same as Persona 4. It's the same effective format of, it's split into 2 parts where you have the social linking, you engage with the characters in the overworld, and then here, every single night, you have the option of going into Tartarus, which is their version of the dungeon. And so it still nails all of that. And I don't want to talk, I obviously can't talk too much about Persona 3 to not spoil it for the audience, but specifically not to spoil it for you, Jonathan. But for me, what makes Persona 3 sort of incredible in a lot of different ways is that as compared to Persona 4, and don't get me wrong, I fucking love Persona 4, Persona 3 feels a lot more mature in a lot of ways, in a way that's really interesting in how it's actually, I played Persona 4 first, and then I went back and played Persona 3, and somehow that feels really appropriate in a lot of ways, because in a lot of ways Persona 3 feels like a natural extension of stuff they do in Persona 4. Where in Persona 3, they experiment with the idea of what a persona is in really interesting ways, and who can use personas and what that means. I mean, even a fucking persona using dog, for God's sake.
If I ever get a dog, he is being named Koromaru.
Yeah, Koromaru, really fucking badass. And Persona 3 has, for me, like, deals with character in a way that's so sophisticated and unbelievable for a video game that no other video game I've ever seen accomplishes. And most other video games don't even have the opportunity, because Persona 3 makes leverage of the fact that this takes place over the course of a year, and that you live that year effectively in real time, like, with these characters. And so these characters have the opportunity to feel like people, like actual people with their own lives. And that's one of the things that feels the most distinct about Persona 3 compared to Persona 4 for me, that goes into even, like, the mechanical stuff that's different with Persona 3, is that Persona 3 makes so much effort for all the characters, the characters, at least in your team, the C's group, to feel so distinct and individual and like actual people, where it's like they have their own lives. And the setup for Persona 3 is effectively you move to this town, and you encounter in this town at midnight something happens called the Dark Hour, where it's basically an hour that most people don't actually experience, or at least they're not aware that they experience it. They sort of, like, they get turned into coffins. Like, that's not important. They don't understand that the Dark Hour is happening. But for some special people, like your main character and the group of people you meet up with, you actually live through the Dark Hour. And during the Dark Hour, these monsters called Shadows come out, and the school turns into Tartarus, this massive tower, and that's where the shadows are coming from. And the shadows sort of prey on the unsuspecting people and consume them and attack them, and are causing this apathy like syndrome thing where people just become lifeless and listless and just lays around the world, like, for months on end, just doing nothing. And so you're sort of, like, thrust into this role of responsibility of you have acquired the power of Persona that allows you to fight the shadows, and you meet up with these other group of students that also have this power, and you all go to that school, and you are tasked with figuring out what Tartarus is, how Tartarus has come to be, what the shadows are, and how you stop the shadows. And that's basically the setup for the game. And the game is so dark. It is so fucking dark and kind of depressing in a way that almost nothing else can be in some of its darkest moments, where it's like you're living actual people, where you're living, like, actual lives with actual people, and they're kids. Like, they're all kids, and they have to deal with it in their own way, and they can't tell anybody about this stuff. You know, the only people they can talk to about the Tartarus stuff are the other kids living in this dorm, all fighting the shadows. But they don't want that to be their whole lives, so they go out and they have their own friends and their own interests and their own clubs that they go to that has nothing to do with your main character. And that sets it so far apart, not only from Persona 4, but from all other games, or most other games, where the main character, in most other stories, where the main character is such the focus, is such a magnetic force for everything in the story, by necessity for, like, you know, for an economy of being able to tell a story. So you can't expect, like, to be able to flesh out all these characters' lives. That, like, Persona 3 is able to leverage this in, like, you know, just because, you know, you're the main character in the story does not mean Yukari, like one of the other characters living in the dorm, like, her entire life revolves around you. You know, she goes to archery club. You never see her do anything related to archery. You never, like, encounter that part of her life. She's constantly talking about hanging out with these other friends that she's made in archery club that you never meet, that you never even see, because that's not your relationship with these people. You are not everything in their lives just because you're the main character. They are all their own people. Yukari, Junpei, Mitsuru, Akihiko, Aigis, Kodomaru, Shinjiro, they are all their own distinct people with their own distinct lives, handling this difficult situation in their own way, and you're not exposed to all of that. And that is something so amazing to me that does so much, and that is reflected in the game mechanics in the sense of that you don't just have, like, magical control over them. It's like you have to talk to them in order to equip items on them. And you don't just get to give them, like direct, like, commands in combat that allows you to control them the same way you control your main character. They have their own AI behaviors in combat, and all of that serves to make them feel like their own people.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I want to say about Persona 3, that just what I've played so far, is that I feel like that sense of isolation is so... that's life. What you're describing there with Persona 3 is, no matter how close you are to someone, you are not them. You do not. Exactly. You don't have a magical connection to anyone else. You are kind of alone in the world to a certain degree always, because you are your own person.
Yeah.
And I think Persona 3, of every game I've ever played so far, even with what I've played so far, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I think Persona 4, obviously, the reason why everyone's so connected is because it's dealing with, different themes, and it's tackling friendship in different ways. But even then, Persona 3, doing this theme of isolation is just terrific.
Yeah, and it's able to do something that nothing else can do, and it so fully takes advantage of the fact that it's a video game. And, like what you said about Persona 4, I think is so completely true about, like, just the Persona series in general, and certainly about Persona 3, of that, what it's able to do being a video game and taking place over the course of this year is that it makes it feel like you lived this year. Like, it's not you played this game, you lived it. Like, you had this completely different experience. You knew all these people, you lived this life. It's just like, and then when it's over, it's almost like you don't know what to do with yourself, because it's like, well, like, what, like, I can't hang out with these people, like, I can't go, like, shoot hoops with Junpei or something. It's just like, he's a fake character. But the way you connect with them so completely, it's just like they feel like real people at a certain point to you, and it's so completely incredible. And for Persona 3, like, I can't go into detail on it, but, like, what sets Persona 3 so completely apart from everything else is, like, you not very quickly realize, but at a certain point you realize Persona 3 is completely 100% about death, and analyzing what death is, what death means to us, and how we deal with death. That is completely what Persona 3 deals with thematically.
I'll say I've realized that by now.
Yes, you've gotten to that point in the game, and
I saw all the Memento Moris in the theme song.
Yeah. Remember, you only live once. But yeah, and what the Persona 3 does, particularly when you get to January, the last month in the game, like, something changes, and it's like everything in the game changes at that point, and you sort of realize what the game is, what the game's doing, what the game is going for. And that whole section of just January straight to the end of the game, it just feels like when I remember it, obviously it's not in terms of game time any longer than really any of the other months in the game, but it feels like its own fucking game. Like, it feels like its own thing, because it's so dense, so emotionally packed, that it's like, when you get to the end, Persona 3 ends on such a poignant note, and such an unbelievable note, that it's just like the experiences you have and the way it wraps up everything. It does a similar, this is not really a spoiler, it does a similar thing that Persona 4 does when you get to the end sections of, like, you can talk to all the people you've social linked and, like, all the characters of the game on, like, the last day of the game or whatever, and just, you get to kind of recap all the events. And going through that, even though playing the social links, I didn't think a lot of the social links on their own, with a few exceptions, were quite as good as, like, the average quality of the social links were for Persona 4. But with Persona 3, for whatever reason, like, the way they framed it and the way they were handling stuff when you were wrapping up the game, and I was just going through and talking to all the people for specific reasons, it hit me so hard of just, like, it's just such an emotional experience of, like, thinking back on this year you've spent in this game and all the stuff you've done and all the people you've encountered, and it's no spoiler, the people you've seen die over the course of this game, and, like, all the lives you've touched, and it's just like you get this full sense of, like, this is what this world is, this is who this character is, this is what this life was, and it's, like, so full and so poignant and unbelievable, and it's all wrapped up into what is, I can say without a doubt, is my favorite character from anything, which is Aigis, the robot girl from this game, and her development over the course of the game, and, like, sort of, like, their struggles with, like, with her own humanity, or, like, perhaps lack thereof, and she doesn't even understand whether or not she's human or not, and sort of dealing with that, and how that, well, it wouldn't seem like that would, like, tie into and, like, analyze and help you come to terms with what death is and what death means, it completely does. And I guess that character encapsulates everything about Persona 3 to me. So it's like, yeah, Persona 3 Fest, it's a completely unbelievable experience, and I think it, death is obviously one of the most, if not the most important thing about being human, is to kind of coming to terms with and understanding your mortality, the fact that everything dies, and, like, and how painful and horrible that is, but how necessary and right it seems it has to be. Persona 3 understands that and presents what death is and what death means, and replicates the experience of knowing people who have died in a way that's like nothing else can even touch. So certainly Persona 3 is my favorite game, and easily one of my favorite things in any form of media I've ever encountered. So,
and I really hope we can do a Persona 3 episode at some point and talk about all this in greater depth. Again, if there's a slow week sometime, let us know if you'd like to hear it. We can probably do it. I will probably finish it while I'm on this vacation, because I'm playing it on the Vita. So I'm excited to see the rest of this game. Because, boy, the stuff that recently happened in the game, for me, was like realizing what it is and seeing the hints of what you're talking about here. I'm very excited, and I could not tell you right now, from where I am, which game is better. I'm really interested to see how it ends.
Yeah, like I would have told you, and I did tell you, that Persona 4 was the better game, and I would have believed that right up until, like, literally the very end of the game, where I'm like, okay, no, Persona 3 is better.
Okay, so I'm really excited to see it.
Me, at least.
All right, so those are our top 10 games. You want to give them a quick recap, Sean?
Yes, I think they deserve it.
All right, we'll do our separate lists.
Okay.
My number 10 was Minecraft, 9, Red Dead Redemption, 8, Portal 2, 7, Batman Arkham City, 6, Bioshock Infinite, 5, The Last of Us, 4, Super Mario 64, 3, Halo Reach, 2, Mass Effect 2, 1, Persona 4, The Golden, and man, after talking about them, I want to go play all those games again.
Yeah, no kidding. And my list is at number 10, Journey, at number 9, StarCraft, at number 8, Half-Life, at number 7, Red Dead Redemption, at number 6, Halo 3, at number 5, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and now my massive RPG block. Number 4, Persona 4, number 3, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, number 2, the Mass Effect trilogy, and at last number 1, Persona 3 FES.
All right, thank you guys for listening. This has been our 3-part countdown of our top 10 favorite video games of all time. We'll be back at you next week. We will probably be talking about the Wolverine movie that will have come out by then. Maybe some other stuff.
Even coming out.
I know. No one even knows it exists. I expect that movie to bomb spectacularly, but we will see.
Yeah, you expect it to pull a Lone Ranger?
Yes. All right, so that's not topical anymore for when this is actually coming out.
No kidding. I wasn't even thinking about that.
All right, so
They pulled a John Carter.
Yes, there we go. All right, see you guys later. This has been our countdown. Hope you enjoyed it.
Video games.
Fuck yeah.